Welcome to Justified Jewel Podcast. My name is Joanne Cox, and I'm so excited to be doing this podcast today. Well, here on Justified Jewel Podcast, we have multiple topics. We go into spirituality, we go into physical health, we go into mental health, social awareness, anything that we believe that would be relevant to each and every person, not just a select few. And today I have a wonderful guest, and his name is LaFrance Ballard. And we are going to be talking about transition. Now, that's a very broad topic, but we're going to break it down into so many different levels of transition. And we're going to ask Mr. Ballard if he would give us a little background about himself, and then we're going to move straight into this podcast. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you for having me here on this wonderful afternoon to be a part of the Justified Jewels podcast. And a little bit about me for the audience is that I served in the Air Force for 22 years. I moved around to eight different locations. I lived in 5 states. I lived overseas for 3 years in Japan. I deployed 6 times during that time, during my tenure in the Air Force, which I would say is incredible, and I would do it all over again. And when I transitioned from the Air Force, I ventured off into the learning and development space, which is where I currently dabble, as I would say. And with that, I would say I am a self-proclaimed talent development professional, a solopreneur, and a family man. And I enjoy spending time with the family because I value time, and time is something, once you lose it, you don't get it back.
That says a lot in itself, doesn't it? The average person, I can tell you this, Tony, the average person will not make the transitions as smooth as some people with a background in the military. The military has a lot of strength in that. And you've already told us about that military. So I want to just push right into your retirement of the military versus civilian life. So tell us about that transition.
That transition, which I would soon discover, was more of a self-discovery phase for me for the first 2 years. And what I did to help me, rebrand, as I got involved, I basically took some of those lessons learned in the military where they teach us how to get involved in the community. And I did just that. And so when we decided on what my family and I decided on where we would settle, I got involved in local chapters such as the Society of Human Resource Management, the Association of Talent Development. And then I also joined some veteran organizations so that I can talk to some peers that may have struggled with the same things that I did to help me overcome those same obstacles, which was the case with Vet Atlanta, which is one of the larger organizations, and Travis Manion Foundation. And I met some incredible people who kind of helped me level set and weigh the pros and cons of what I wanted to do going forward for in regards to life after the military. And I would just say it's been paying dividends ever since.
Okay, now you are the cream of the crop. And so what I was hearing is how you took action. First of all, you already had the plan of retiring. Right. So in knowing that you're going to retire, there has to be a plan of action. There has to be a strategy. And the average person needs to hear this. When you get ready to do a transition, don't panic. First of all, sit down and communicate with others that have maybe done the same thing that you're about to do, and then reach out and step out without that fear of knowing that it's going to be okay. Well, what I'm listening to with you, Tony, you knew what you were going to do. You know you needed to talk to several people outside of the source, and you went there. So now you have put the playing level in your field. Now you can communicate with other people. And I heard human resources. So I already know the end story. So I'm not going to jump the gun. But when you're thinking about that and discussing it with your family, that's another transition. But before we get to you being an entrepreneur, I want to talk about the transition and the talk that you have with your family. And when you made that, you left one state and went to another state. So that's a whole nother transition. So tell me about that move.
It was turbulent. And what I realized more than anything towards I call it the fourth quarter of my career, before that game ends, is that my family, especially I call them my young adults now because they're in their 20s, they were struggling just as much as I was with some of the moves and the deployments. And mental health was one of those conversations that we talked about a lot. So when we would talk about our long-term goals and what we wanted to do for our new chapter, for me, it's a new book versus a new chapter. So because we were literally changing our direction with everything that we wanted to do going forward. And so my oldest transitioned to civil service, and he's successful at doing that. I have my daughter, who's my princess. I'm a girl dad, and she's graduating in May. Everyone's doing better mental health wise. We all went to counseling. We all tried to take advantage of opportunities to improve on our self-care, not necessarily what we think other people should be doing better, but what can we do to be better ourselves. And then my youngest got more involved in basketball. So we planned everything around the things that give people a safe haven. Well, my family a safe haven from an individual perspective. And we made that part of the focal point of our planning efforts. And then I do many family reunions with my siblings and my in-laws. So we do that on a smaller scale where we try to meet up at least once a year or once a quarter if time permits. So we kind of a group get together during holidays, and then we play games and we just talk about life. And I work in the diversity and inclusion space. So we tap into that a lot. Like what makes you different? We don't try to put anybody in a box. So when we play these games, we want them to be themselves when we're in the midst of each other, when we're in the house together, and let the outside world be external to the house.
Well, congratulations on that daughter getting ready to graduate. That's a big thing. And I said earlier in the introduction of this podcast that we speak on several subjects. Well, you are speaking on all of them at one time, because you're talking about that legacy with the family and breaking it down with the reunions. And you talked about the mental health aspect of it. Most of the time, we're not even touching that area. When you talk about mental health, to go from one state to another one and to have students that are still in school and that you have a wife, all of those people are intricate parts of your life. And when you make that move and sit down, sometimes you put things on the table, but you use the word turbulent because of the fact that everything is not going to always be smooth sailing. And that's what we need to hear, because if you know of some challenges that might take place, now you know how to work on them, because that is going to happen and you put that forefront. So that family reunion is going outside of just your immediate family. And those are things that we don't talk about a thing. But in order to have a wonderful and civil communication with others, we need to include people that are extended outside of that circle when it comes to that. Now, you talked about the inclusion, and you talked about a new career. You talked about all these things. Let's dig deeper into your new career and what that title is and how you actually stepped into it.
So for my new career as a talent development professional, what I did was I evaluated what I've done in the past and looked at it from a perspective of what makes me happy. And to your point, the turbulence, the resiliency training piece was something that is near and dear to me that I was taught in the military. And with resiliency training, we tap into the technical aspect, which is your job, like how are you doing on your job? And then mental, which we talked about, and then physical. So we all got a gym membership and we got to go to the gym together. And then spirituality is something that we talk about. When all else fails, you have to rely on your faith sometime to keep you going when you run out of gas. And so with my career, I aligned that aspect of it, going back to what I said earlier, to the talent development professional. My goal is to pay it forward. And that's something that I was taught early on in my career. And I didn't realize until I started doing public speaking engagements that it was part of my upbringing as well. And so my grandmother and mother always taught me to, hey, help someone that can be mindful of helping people who can't help themselves, was one of the lessons that we learned growing up. So we always do things with the elderly and people who just couldn't do things physically. We volunteered our time to help them with that. And so talent development helps me to help other people sharpen their skills, develop their talents, up skills, look for opportunities with them, and joining those organizations, being a talent development professional, gives me a chance to help them unlock what they don't know. So that unconscious bias, what is it that I don't know that I want to know, but I don't understand how to get there? And I struggle with that too. So I kind of put myself in the shoes of the individual who I'm helping from a talent development professional perspective. And I also help with the diversity and inclusion became more of a niche because everybody's different. And the more you explore things like the diversity wheel that has 4 dimensions, and it starts with your personalities, introvert versus extroverts, and then it transitions to the equal opportunity categories that we all are familiar with, which is where everybody goes to first when we do diversity and inclusion, but it's beyond that. And then you have the 3rd dimension, which is more of the things that you don't know about me until you get to know me, like what is my education background? Where did I go to school? What was my upbringing like? And then the last dimension that I like to touch on in the DEI space and doing talent development is, do you really understand the organization? And again, the 2 things I took away from the Air Force for talent development is how well do you understand institutional level knowledge and how well do you understand occupational level knowledge when you're transitioning into a new environment from a talent development perspective. So those 2 are what I own the most when I'm doing talent development activities.
Tony, you were just saying so much. Now, when I asked Tony if he would come on the podcast and talk about transitions, I selected him because I knew that he had been through several transitions in different levels. But what I'm hearing now is that he has to come back because we have to separate this, because I want you to tell us how to get from level 1 to 2 to 3. And now I'm hearing about the grandparent that have produced that seed. And now you have fertilized and watered that seed by being in the military and telling us what you got from each area as you're growing. And I truly believe that when we're growing up, what we are going to do in our purpose in life will extend and continue to progress because it's already there on what we should do. We just need to know how to sharpen it. And to do that and to be able to do that, I heard the word resilience. I love that word, resilient, because I have a book that's coming out that I'll talk about later, but I use the term bounceability. You're going to fall. You're going to have these challenges. But if you know how to get back up and start running again, and if you can depend and rely on your spirituality, that is going to bring you forth. Then you've got this family that's backing you. And when people are close to each other, they know when they see the challenges, and they know when they see maybe a twinge of the flame start to go out, and they can fan that flame and bring it back to life again. That is what we're all needing. So when you say this and you're going through all of this here, then I want to actually slow it down, but not right now, but I want to slow it down so that you can teach us. And how great is this? These are one of the things that I say when I start the podcast that I did not say today. You always need to come to this podcast with pen and paper. Okay. These are notes to be taken because you can't take all of this in at one time, but you can look at this over and over. But I want you to think about this mental health and the connection and the extended family with this transition. So Tony, what I want to do now is move on to some of the goals that you have for the future in making all of these things happen.
Yes, great question, Joanne. And I'm a very goal-oriented person, and that goal is constantly shifting. And one of the things that I'm working on right now is my educational goals. So I'm in the process. I was accepted into Kennesaw State University's PhD program. So I will be pursuing that this fall. And my ultimate goal is to become a tenured professor. And it aligns with the things that I like, being in the talent development space and understanding like an organization's most valuable resource, which is people. So we can recruit and attract people, but how do you keep people is going to be the problem. And as studies will always say, people quit their bosses, not necessarily their jobs. It's some of the things that we point back to. And then also, what is the environment? Again, I'm touching on that organizational dimension for the DEI wheel. Does the organization establish a culture that's inclusive to their employees that makes them want to stay? Because you can't always put the responsibility on a manager or a first line supervisor, because that organization might not have programs that are established to kind of help them upskill and be that leader that the employee needs. And again, it all boils down to budget. Of course, budget, money makes the world go round. So the contingent on the budget, the leadership, the culture of the leadership, which is something I intend to talk about for my dissertation, because that was one of the requirements going forward, as I want to talk about high performers and in relation to the culture of an organization and perceived career development opportunities is something that I want to explore just a little bit more and to see what I can't see, and then share those best practices. And then one of the other goals that I have in mind is to take the solopreneur to another level in the next 3 to 5 years. So right now I'm just focusing on getting my education down and then becoming a better entrepreneur on a larger scale. And right now I can't do that until I accomplish my foundation first. And I feel like the educational goals is the foundation that I need to explore my business ventures a little bit more.
Education is never out for the pros because we have to continuously learn. And when some companies get so large, they only think about the attracting of people instead of what is going to make them stay. And that's how we fail. But I'm thinking, as the thinking man would think, is that you've already got that all planned out because you know about the attraction. That's the easy part.
Yes.
You know, to get someone in that space, but to keep them is totally different.
Yes.
And they're not usually wanting to spend the money to keep them. But what would be the point of having them if you can't keep them? Because that is where it is. And with that goal, and you are, this man is already talking about his dissertation. He already know what he wants to write about. And he's not even there yet. So is that what I call pre-planning? That is what we call high performance thinking. In order to continuously grow, and if you're on this podcast, it means that you're following people that are well educated, well rounded, and we have to have all of that wrapped up into one because we have to see beyond what is actually in front of us. Just like when you listen to a meteorologist, they're not just telling you that it's raining, they're telling you what caused the rain, where it's going to go, how the wind is going to happen. And if you just look at every aspect of any subject in a professional person, you are going to find the same qualities that they're going to look at the past, they're going to look at the present, they're going to look at the future. Then they're going to measure some of the things that took place and why they didn't take place. And that is when you're connecting with the right kind of people. So don't just say, I don't want to be a meteorologist. I don't want to work as a professor. Understand that they all have the same thing in common, and that is to grow and also to help other people. We can't leave that out because when we touch each other, we are also growing ourselves because you can't grow without actually helping someone else in this. Now I want to find out about the people that you are helping, Tony. And do you look back and see where you are with them or how you have affected them in any way with the knowledge that you put upon them?
Yes. And for me, great question, Joanne. I look at it as reverse mentoring too. So for me, it's not about me helping them. I also look for opportunities for me to learn too. Like, what can I do better? I still help a lot of veterans that are wearing a uniform, veterans that took the uniform off. And a lot of it has to do with career transitioning. So it's funny that we're talking about this topic today because a lot of those mentorship conversations revolve around transitioning because everyone at some point in life is going to go through that self-discovery phase. And they're like, hey, I don't understand. I don't know what makes me happy or where I want to be. And we kind of have conversations around, well, let's talk about what you've done, because sometimes what you've done and how you did it, there's an answer there, but you don't understand what's there until you start talking about it. And I notice not everyone have conversations about like their past, to your point, your past, what you're doing right now, and then where you're going, and looking for trends in those conversations that you can pinpoint to kind of create a blueprint, a soft blueprint. And then you're not going to have 100% solution. So we just talk about what does 80% look like, and let's put it in motion and then let it evolve. So once you build a foundation, and then you just start pursuing it, those soft goals, and then let it shape on its own, because life is going to take you in that direction, because you might not have the resources to do some of what you want to do, but there's always an alternative, in my opinion. You might have to take a step back. Yep.
Yeah. And the thing is, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And when you don't know what you don't know, how do you get there? And I'm hearing that the more you talk, the more you can actually assist that person, because those are things that they didn't think about.
Yes.
Because they didn't think about, now you can pull those forth, and you're not misleading them and letting them know it's 80%, not 100%. Because sometimes it's just like, well, it didn't happen yet, Tony. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And my next question is huge, Tony. So get ready. How do you just throw out this inkling of negativity that we know can destroy the whole concept of what you're doing? How did you get rid of that?
I embrace it. I embrace the negativity. And I just keep going. So there, to me, one of the things I was taught too, as well in my upbringing, is there's a positive in every situation. So my question I always ask myself is, what can I learn from this, and what would I do differently? And then I don't let the negativity weigh me down. So again, that spirituality piece that we talked about before, I leverage that. So that spirituality is not necessarily religious per se. Again, military, you meet people from all walks of life. So you have these discussions. So it could be meditation. It could be me going to somewhere where I just need like a break from reality. So a digital break. Give me time to get my thoughts together. I'm introverted, so I know for me, in order for me to recharge, if I'm not recharged, that negativity will eat at me. That's when I know, hey, I need to take a step back. I need to go check myself. I need to go spend some time by myself just to gather my thoughts, take a digital break, and just press pause. And one of the models that I use, to your point, that kind of wraps up what I'm saying, is called Johari's window. And Johari's window, there's a window, it's literally a window pane. And the bottom right window pane is, I don't know what I don't know. And the more you communicate with your audience, that's how you shrink that window. That's your ultimate goal.
That's huge right there.
Yes.
That's huge right there. I need to just jump through that window. and what I do a lot of speaking on is self-mastery, because before you can do any of this, you have to take care of who you are, but you can't do that unless you know who you are.
Right.
And in doing so, you have to have that spirituality piece, and you have to have the physical health, and you have to have the mental health in this. So when we wrap all of these things up, now we know how we're going to do with our occupation. We know how we're going to do with our family. And we know that we need to fill the cup every time it gets half empty, because we need to pour into others. And whether you're an introvert or extrovert, you have to fill that cup. Because the more you pour out, the more you're going to need to refill that. And how are you going to help your fellow man if you can't have everything intact? And sometimes we have a tendency to say, I'll do one more thing. But with self-mastery, one more thing leads you down a dark place, and you don't want to be there. Because the one more thing, I think, is that, okay, I need to be my best self. And in order for me to do that, I have to know when to say the wonderful word, no, not at this time. I'll get back with you. You can say it in a very soft manner, so that you're not pushing someone away, but letting them know that this is not a good time for you. And you would be so much better at what you have to offer by simply taking that break, so that you can recharge and get energized in that. So just to sum all of this up, it's all about self-mastery. It's about education. Is never out for the pros, because you're wanting to continue to grow, and you want to know about resilience. When you fall, it's okay to jump back up. Not okay, but it's a must that you do have that already planned, because he's talked about his family and his mental stability. He's talked about relocating from one state to another one. He's talked about a new career, goals and friends and associates. But that is my summarization as I take notes. Tony, tell us how you want to end this podcast and what are the most important things that they should take away.
So to your point about self-mastery, one of the things that I would challenge the audience to do is take a personality assessment. Myers-Briggs is one of the most popular ones, or DISC, and find out what your strength is. And once you find out what your strengths are, use it to your advantage to improve your personal and professional development and to grow as an individual.
Okay, and I want to end this. I'm going to ask Tony if he would tell us how to get in contact with him, because I want to take care of myself. And I believe in a investment. And I need to hire Tony. Okay, so that I can reach a higher level of where I am. And I'm open for that. Tony, how do we get in contact with you? And what do you have to offer us, no matter what career we're in?
The best way to get in touch with me is Facebook or LinkedIn. I have a professional page on both. And again, my name on both platforms is Tony Ballard, and you'll see me in a blue suit on both with a white shirt. And for the last question, well, repeat the last question one more time for me.
It was how to actually get in contact, and can you help us regardless to what career field we're in?
Yes, to answer your question. So to me, talent development is regardless of industry. And those two things that I pointed out earlier about what I learned in the military, every organization has its own institutional level knowledge, but there's a basic framework there. And I say that because everyone goes to school, for instance, business administration, but business administration isn't attached to a particular company.
That's right. That's right. It's all about that self-development. And as I had said earlier, no matter where we are, we can still get better in the space that we're actually in.
Yes.
He's a great speaker, as you can hear today. And have him anywhere, virtual or in person, and I guarantee you, he will change your life. We have known each other for quite some time, and I can just think. And I actually have a model of the thinking man. And I said, what is it that I should be putting forth right now? And I said, oh, okay, this is what Tony would be thinking about. And I need to make sure that I'm making these transitions. So you need to have people that they don't have to be directly in front of you. But once they have that word for you, you can just sort of bring it back. It's almost like a wonderful vacation. You can think about when you were in Hawaii and it makes you happy. Then I can think about Tony and get well educated and say, you know what? I'm in a good group because I know Tony Ballard. Yes. And this is the end of our program. Again, my name is Joanne Cox, and you're listening and looking at Justified Jewel Podcast. We will be having Tony back. So until then, have a great day and look for both of us. Bye-bye.